I wanna be a producer with a hit show on Broadway.
You're listening to the Producer's Perspective Podcast with your host, Tony Award winner, Ken Davenport.
Hey everybody, Ken Davenport here. This week's podcast, I'm talking to music director extraordinaire Kristen Blodgette, who's going to give you a great tip for actors auditioning out there, as well as tell you her opinions on the incredible Shrinking Orchestra. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about a great show that's currently playing at my theater only through November 25th. Through November 25th, go see Popcorn Falls. Super funny show directed by the one and only Broadway star, Christian Borle. So go to popcornfalls.com and get your tickets now through November 25th. And now, here comes Kristen Blodgette. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Ken Davenport. This is episode 166. And I'm thrilled to have as my guest today as my 166th guest, one of by far the best conductors and musical supervisors on Broadway today. Please welcome Maestro Kristen Blodgette to the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
So just a smattering of Kristen's wand-waving credits include Sunset Boulevard, Cats, Phantom, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and a whole host of others. And actually, I was in the room when I heard Andrew Lloyd Webber say to you, you can conduct one of my shows anytime you want. Which must have been quite a thrill to hear.
I'm so glad you heard that, because I thought he might have said that, but I keep thinking, did I adjust reality there?
He said
that
it.
Happen?
Actually, what I remember about that moment is the sheer joy and thrill you had on your face when you heard that. And it just made me respect you that much more, because you've had an incredible career. You've done a ton of stuff, and still at this point, a compliment like that meant a lot to you.
Oh, it meant the world to me.
So that's the kind of skill Kristen has. That's who we're talking to today. So let's start off. Were you one of those people that played piano at like 1.5 or 2?
I'd like it to be that young. It was 4.
4? Oh,
yes.
Okay.
It was a late bloomer, yes.
Your parents get you involved? Is that how it started?
I had heard a neighbor play, a little kid neighbor play, and I immediately was responding to it. And so my parents looked for a teacher who would teach a 4-year-old. So.
And were you super quick to it? Were you one of those, like, you took a lesson or two and then all of a sudden you were playing Tchaikovsky or whatever?
Not that quick. I wish I was that quick, but I was super quick to love it. I was never one that they had to say, go practice. It was, I from an early age, I found something that excited me, soothed me, inspired me. I mean, it's crazy. You know, like some kids do basketball and do, I don't know, computer games or something. And it was like the piano was, oh, I found it. And what's really funny is that I don't play as much anymore, of course. I play to prepare. But when I go back to the piano and start in, like after an hour, I get back to that Zen place of comfort that I had from my whole life.
How nice to have something that's your profession also give you comfort.
Oh, can you imagine? It gives me discomfort when I realize how far I've fallen from the way I used to play, but that's the way it goes.
So I'm sure your career as a musician could have gone many different paths. You could have been a performer, a classical performer. How did you end up in this crazy world of theater?
Well, I started going to see shows when I was really young. My parents would take us to what was the Hannah in Cleveland, Ohio. And we would, I think the first show that I saw was The Music Man. And when I heard the overture, when I heard the opening, I was, as a child, mesmerized. And so I loved that. I was taking piano in a classical way. I was training to be a classical pianist, but I always loved theater. I was involved in every musical thing you could be involved in elementary school and junior high school and high school. I played hooky from nearly everything else. I escaped science and everything that was practical so that I could fill up my days with music. And I did. And then I went to Cincinnati Conservatory to get a degree in piano performance. And the minute I got there, I went there to study with a teacher who was a Haydn, his focus was on early music and Haydn, and I chose that. And the minute I got there, I realized, oh my goodness, I was a big fish in a little pond, and I am not good enough to have a classical career. I mean, it was very clear to me. There were so many brilliant people there.
That's a very objective thing to say at a young age.
Yeah, it was very clear. And I worked really hard. I mean, my teacher was, he was pretty rough, and I mean, a good teacher, but he was very demanding, and I would play with weights on my wrists, and I would practice for 6 hours a day with weights on my wrists and play. And that's probably why I often am told I play like a truck driver, a good truck driver, but it's a heavy hand. And it wasn't good enough. And I knew that. And I also was working in the vocal studios as an accompanist. And that I loved. I loved the collaboration. I loved learning about the voice through listening to all those teachers. And I thought, okay, I'm more of a collaborator than a soloist. And so that had a little clarity in it, that observation. And then I went to grad school. I got a assistantship in opera coaching and accompanying and conducting. And I did that and I loved it. So I was like going, oh, am I going to go the opera route? Am I going to do that? But musical theater was always what I loved, more than anything. And I feel like I was posing to try and have a classical career because the musical theater felt like just such a big bundle of joy for me. It didn't feel like work. Do you know what I mean? It was like, oh, well, I mean, no one said this, but the voice in me was saying, oh, she's playing. Yeah, she's playing. She loves that stuff. It was, sort of a 24 hours a day thing, me in theater. And then, but I wanted the legitimacy of an education in classical music. And I'm not saying one has to have that or that that's even valid, but that's what my brain said, was that I needed to have classical training. And so I did. And I had done theater all through that in summers, and I did all the summer stock and everything there is to do. And then when I was 25, I moved to New York without any money, without any contacts.
None. Just.
And I had one friend who had a studio apartment, and she allowed me to stay with her for 2 weeks. I just had no idea what I was getting into with regard to the challenges of moving here and having a career. But I think that innocence was helpful to me because I wasn't deterred. I was just like, well, I'm going to do this. This is what I love. I'm going to do it. And so
you did.
I did. Yeah.
And when you got here,
how did I make money? How did I do it?
Yeah. What was the first? You get here. I'm going to do this. And then was it crickets for a while? What did you do to get started?
I always love that, crickets. I remember posting little cards in places that said, I'm a vocal coach, $10 an hour if you need a pianist. Of course, I didn't have a piano and I didn't have an apartment. So I was like, oh, how about... And I tried that. And also from my connections in Cincinnati, I had played for John Alexander, who was a tenor at the Met. And he would call me to go through roles with him. And that kind of experience in the opera world, limited as it was, allowed me to make a little money and do that with John. He was a fantastic tenor. And then I had an interview set up by a friend of mine with Equity Library Theater. You're too young.
No, I remember.
Okay. Lynn Montgomery.
Yeah.
And Eric Hoganson was the person. Do you know Eric?
No.
Who set up the interview. He's a wonderful lyricist. And when I met with Lynn, she said, "What's your experience?" And, my experience was ridiculously nothing. Well, I played in the church choir and I did this summer thing, and you know what I mean? It was like nothing impressive. And she said, I don't see that this is going to work, but you can go have an interview with the director. And I did, and I got the job, and it was for for a production of Plain and Fancy. Do you know that show?
Sure.
Oh my gosh. How do you build a barn? Oh, it's great, isn't
the
it?
Amish musical.
Yes, the Amish musical.
Of course, because there should be an Amish musical.
Why not? Oh, it is beautiful music. I mean, Albert Haig and so I did that, and from that I got a dinner theater gig, and I went and did that.
So let's just go back to Plain and Fancy for a second, because she was like, this is never going to work.
Right.
If you got the job, why do you think they hired you if you didn't have experience and they didn't see it working? Why did the director hire you?
I think that it was because I had clear intentions. He asked questions and I answered them honestly. He said, "What do you do well? What's your favorite thing? What do you not do well?" And I remember going back to my apartment and calling my parents and saying, "Well, this is never going to work. I just flubbed my first interview." And they said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I couldn't sell myself. I just couldn't quite, do it." And then I got a call later and I got it. So I think clear intentions is a good thing.
I also want to go back to this, you posting business cards places, this little, you were an entrepreneur as well as an artist. I love that. Did it work? Did people call you?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it didn't support me, but it worked. I mean, one of the other things that I did was when I was in college, Chorus Line had just started. What year was Chorus Line?
80-something.
Okay, it was
70-something?
78, I think, because I think I was in grad school. And a friend of mine, Tony Girallis, had gone out on the road with it. And I knew Chorus Line was running here in New York. And I, found out how to call Don Pippin, I think was Don conducting at the time? And I waited and called during intermission and said, "Hello, can I speak with Don Pippin?" And I called the stage door. And
called the theater.
Yes.
You called the Schubert Theater.
I did.
During a Chorus Line.
Yeah. And I said, "I'm a pianist in Cincinnati and I really want to do Chorus Line, and can I come and play for you?" And he said, "Well, maybe you should move here first." This was before I had moved here. So fun things like that. But, that's when you don't have all those limitations in front of you.
Yeah, things like that are easier to do when you're younger.
They are. Now I'd be like, I don't think I will. Yeah.
So what was the first Broadway gig you got?
Phantom.
I
mean, I did, my first big gig was, Barnum. I was on the road with Barnum. I was one of the pianists. I played for Cy Coleman. That was the biggest break, probably. I mean, one of them. I feel like I've had a lot of gifts like that. But and then I went out with On Your Toes with Leslie Caron and Natalia Makarova. Remember that show? Did you ever see it?
No, I never saw it. But
Oh, it's a great show. And then Jerry's Girls, and then out on the road with Cats. And from Cats, that was my introduction to Andrew's world. And from Cats, David Caddick hired me to be the pianist, rehearsal pianist, one of them for Phantom.
So let's talk about music directors in general for a second.
Yeah.
I think there's some confusion, or people don't actually know what they do. So
right.
If you were writing a classified ad for a music director to a group of people that didn't know what would you describe as the duties? What does an MD do?
That's a very good question. And the answer would be dependent on what kind of musical. I, for example, just saw King Kong. Okay. And so you have King Kong, you have Dear Evan Hansen, you have Phantom, and all of those are going to require really different talents and skills, I think. One of the most important things is being a collaborator, an organizer of energy, an organizer of people, so that you are a conduit of sorts. There's a certain level of creativity that is required, or that one would hope one would bring to a project, so that you can bring composer, lyricists, and book writers' visions to something tangible. And that, I think the people skills required I think that's a big component that we don't always think of.
I was not expecting you to say people before music.
I know.
But
perhaps, do I have it in the wrong order? I don't know. You know, there are also genius musical directors who probably aren't as comfortable with the people skills. And that can work too if you have a team around you that does that. You have, depending on the project, it's helpful to have knowledge of voices, but again, depending on the project, it doesn't matter so much. And then, of course, there's a lot of sit-down conductors, stand-up conductors, as far as if they're conducting behind a keyboard or if they're just, purely conducting. The landscape for musical directors, I think, is ever changing and ever evolving. And I find myself in the curious position of wondering where a person like me fits anymore. Isn't that interesting?
Really? Why?
Well, I was speaking with one of the subs on Dear Evan Hansen, and he was saying how it's a playing keyboard book, and half of the challenge of it, first of all, it's played on an iPad, from an iPad, so there's no score, it's an iPad. And then one of the challenges of it, and I may have this technically wrong, but is he is responsible for generating the click tracks. So he is starting and stopping click tracks, working with an iPad, working on it, and that is a whole skill set unto itself, That takes a different kind of brain than the one I have.
I was going to ask you how the gig has changed since you started. It sounds like that's certainly one of the reasons, the advent of technology into what you do.
Yes.
Any other things that have changed?
Well, I think that the technology aspect is a big one, although I have enjoyed watching that happen. I think it at times, when used correctly, it has enhanced that we do. It hasn't changed it terribly much for me because there's so many people who do that aspect of it well, and I say, okay, do that. Okay, reprogram that. I don't do it. So that's good, because I don't, but I'm sure there are times when I would need to, and I probably wouldn't choose to. There's too much for me to learn outside of the realm of technology right now that I would prefer to focus on. You know what I mean?
What do you think about the size of orchestras today versus?
Well, that is something I've had to deal with a lot. When we started Phantom, I believe we had 28, and we had above what the number was required in that house. And we now the definitive orchestration that is done with Phantom is 14 pieces, and
half the original.
Half, yeah. And I guess I'm trying to think of I think we went from 27 to some of the European companies maybe 20 or 25 years ago. We did 18, then 17, then 16, and now it's 14. And I really, really found that difficult, and I had to talk myself into being okay with it. But it's beautiful and it works. And I that's hard for me to say because I know how my colleagues who are players feel about that. It's a real loss, but it does work. And I don't know, this is what you know and Andrew knows and I don't, but what the ramifications, what the requirements, what does that save us to melt something down, to compress it to 14? What is the financial, I don't want to know, but I know there's a huge financial savings in doing that, but it also puts, there are aspects of it that put it in a more contemporary setting. There are aspects of Phantom that have been updated in a way that allows it to sit comfortably in this day and age without sounding horribly dated. And I think that some of that is the adjustments in the orchestration.
And I don't think there's anyone better suited to talk about how music has changed since you got started, other than conductor, music director. What do you think about the state of music on Broadway today? How has it morphed and changed with the new musicals coming out today?
Well, I think that I think that whatever period we are in as performers, creators, conductors, we're going to think that this was the best. This time frame was the best. And, those people behind and after, well, good luck, but this is the best. And I don't want to think like that. I want to be open to everything. I feel like I was almost born a bit late because I love the music of the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. I like Roger Hammerstein and Lauren Lowe and all those composers too. And then I made the jump to Andrew, which I'm in love with. Of course, you can't do it that long without loving it. And now, and I'm a Sondheim fan too. I'm a Sondheim complete and total fan.
Oh, Andrew fan and Sondheim.
Yeah. Good luck with that. But I think that there are a lot of talented new composers and new writers out there. And when I saw Hamilton, I've seen it 3 times. I've been blown away. And I think this is a great way to introduce us to a new generation of musical theater writers and composers. Same thing with Dear Evan Hansen. I've seen it twice. I loved it. I think that it's really changed because of the advance of everything technically. Audiences aren't as patient, aren't as... everything's faster. I'm the same, actually. We get on our phones, we do the, Instagram, pat, 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 quick move through. We have attention spans that are moving quicker than they were. And I think that the new material is moving with that in a way that will be supported by the generations that are coming up.
So you can hear that in the music. And now I can hear it, actually, now that I think about Dear Evan Hansen.
Yes.
Versus Phantom.
Exactly. It's a different way of processing theater. And everybody's out with their phones and everybody's, and that's indicative of how we need to move if we're to create new things, I think. I don't know. I don't want to think that the technology has made a negative impact, but I don't know how many people going to theater from the Midwest would sit through a Sondheim show and revel in the lyrics. I don't know.
Have you ever written?
No.
Any desire?
No.
Never?
No.
How come?
I don't feel... I am am a person who likes to take people's ideas and see what that person really intends, and then see if I can sort of make it bloom. That's what I like to do. I don't have the ideas.
I really doubt that. I mean, I can't believe that. No ideas. After all the stuff you said, you've never been like, that sounds good. You're fooling around the piano.
No, but you know what? I did have a wonderful moment with, and I bring it up because it really was important to me, and I saw a video clip of it the other day. I was listening to Carrie. There was, someone had posted, some sort of reel of Carrie. And I was a rehearsal pianist for Carrie.
Oh, there's some great stuff in there. I had bootlegs that I listened to over and over again.
Me too. And I was watching, and I was primarily there for Betty. But I was a rehearsal pianist. But it was Betty. And she and I would go into the rehearsal room, and There's No Sun When There's No One, that song. And she, she would like meditate on it, and I would join her energy, and she'd go, that doesn't work. And pianistically, I would find little things that she liked, and that was as close as I got to being creative. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. With her in those little tiny moments. And I'll hear just a little chord or two thing, but that's it. No.
You've worked with obviously some major, massive stars, from Betty to Glenn. We were just talking about your work with Josh Groban.
Yeah.
What's that like? Do you find, why do you think, one, they love working with you? And how do you get the best out of these people for our world? When sometimes, like Josh, for example, not from our world.
Yes.
But his performance, in Natasha Pierre, which has been brilliant.
Yes.
What's it like working with these folks?
Did you enjoy it?
I thought he was brilliant. And I was never the biggest fan of him before, to be honest.
Right.
I was like, oh yeah, he's talented. But I didn't listen or watch. And then I saw him in that show, and I was blown away.
Right. Me too. I thought he was really fantastic. Working with the people that I've been able to work with has been it's just been thrilling. It's daunting at first, it's how, what do they want? What do they need? How can you make them the best, or how can you help them get there? And, the three people you just mentioned, they're incredible. They're perfectionists. Glenn, Lord, she's just a perfectionist. They all are. But hers, my experience with her is at the forefront of my thoughts these days, just because it was recent and it was so important to me in my life, working with her. We would do warm-ups every single performance. Every performance, we'd spend 20 minutes warming up, getting prepared. She never missed. And even, I think she called out one show, and she came in and did her warm-up for that show. Like, she was not going to miss it. And I had to say, you're going to miss the show. It's not going to happen. She couldn't phonate, but she thought she was still going to do it. But, working with those people at that level, they have so much risk. It's so much risk, and I think that you have to go into it sort of really aware of what's at stake for them, and how can you really support what they need to do. How can you support it?
That statement alone, you can see why they love working with you. Such an empathy there for these people that so many people wouldn't have. Oh, Glenn Close, she's massive. What does she need? What about non-singers?
Well, I like that too.
Who's the most non-singer you've worked with?
Yeah, let's think about that. Because I've worked with some pretty non-singers. I'm trying to think of who's the most non-singer. I'm going to have to think about that and get back to you. I don't remember who's the most non-singer. I mean, this probably won't be terribly interesting, but working with sweet dancers who, Cats is full of people whose physical skills are off the charts. It's just like, wow, how do you do that? And then they are very hesitant and tentative when it comes to singing, because that's not something they've necessarily focused on. And so I like trying to get them to find their voice and feel confident with it. And I also feel a responsibility as we hire people. If we put the stamp on them of we have hired them, then I feel like it's a responsibility to try and make them good. Isn't it? I mean, that's what the job is. It's we have said you're the right person, and if we get it wrong, then we have to be really careful of how we handle that, because we have cast them.
So let's take one step back for a second. What do you look for in auditions? You're in auditions all the time.
I love auditions.
You love them.
I love auditions. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why?
Oh, because it is an opportunity to hear repertoire that I don't get to hear all the time. I learn new things. I learn new songs. I am constantly reminded of the passion and the desire young people, old people have to be in this business, to be part of this world. And I get to see it in droves during auditions. And I think it gives me a really good perspective of what this means. And I never lose sight of that. And I think auditions help with that.
What's the first thing you look for from a performer when they walk in the door?
I look for something that interests me. It's not the voice. It's not the physical. It's just like something behind their eyes, something, just anything to, we talk about disturbing the air, something that just makes you look up. I mean, you can sit behind the table in one of those rooms, as you know, and it's just person after person after person after person. And I feel like if someone isn't engaging at 10 feet away, then I don't know how engaging they'll be in a theater. So I look for the essence of them is what I guess I look for. Doesn't that sound like what I'm describing? I always say to people, sing something you like to sing. And, because sometimes people come in and they'll go, I want to show you my high E. I want to show you, I have a really good solid B flat if I'm a tenor. And, that would be great to hear, but we can ask for that after to see if there's a light behind your eyes.
What great advice for actors out there. Just sing what you love, to sing first.
Yes. Now, if you're coming in for Phantom, I wouldn't sing, Don't Rain on My Parade, but because Phantom's not a belting show, but yeah.
Should there be a Tony Award for music directors again?
Well, I do think that in a musical, the musical director does have a role in it that's important. So it's always sort of amused me that that's left out. And I read the, Broadway World, rundowns or whatever they're called of, new productions, and they'll name everyone except for the musical director. And it's just curious to me what people think, who does that?
It's one of those things, because without a doubt, you're the equivalent of a designer. But we can't see the music. That's
right.
That's why sound designers struggled. It was in and out because you can't see it.
Well, I'm very happy that sound designers are back in, because they can kill us or make. You know what I mean? The sound designer is so critical to everything we do. Everything.
Well, hopefully the lobby for the music director Tony Award will start here. Okay, my last question, my genie question.
Oh boy.
I want you to imagine that the genie from Aladdin comes to visit you.
Yes.
To thank you for your contributions to the theater and to helping out all those actors that you just helped out, actually. And by granting you one wish, what's the one thing that drives you crazy about Broadway? You're such a positive spirit. What makes you mad? What could get you to flip up this table, throw something against the wall that you'd ask this genie to wish away in an instant?
The apathy, the lack of passion that seems to develop in long-running shows. Not everyone, but in those few people who take it for granted or who think it's a day job. I think it's magic. I think it's magic that we get to do this. And it hurts me when I see people do that. It hurts me. And it could make me, it could make me toss a table. Yeah, I go crazy when I see people fooling around or when I see apathy. I can't bear it.
And you've been involved with Phantom on and off now for how long?
30 years.
30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but, we have a great company now. We have a great orchestra. They're fantastic. Last night I was back and it felt like being home. I was so happy to be back and conducting. And I think everybody there knows how I feel about that. And they all work really hard. But when I hear people talk about, oh, this, I gotta go to work or something, I'm like, wait. Didn't we dream about this? So that makes me crazy.
It makes me crazy as well on all of my shows.
Does it?
We're very lucky to be able to do what was a hobby for us.
Exactly.
That we would do, frankly, for free.
Absolutely. I still would.
Sometimes I do it for free when I'm actually not trying to do
exactly.
it for
free. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for your passion for the theater. Thanks to all of you for listening. We will see you next time on the Producer's Perspective Podcast.